Um, okay. So if you could be part of any world record, what would it be? It's a bit of a tricky question. I don't know how I'm going to answer it. So feel free to to hem and haw. And I think I'll pass to you, Juan Carlos. So the opening question is if you could be part of any world record, what would it be?
I think it would be the world record of never getting stressed. Be amazing. Like to be always fresh. But I don't know, I sometimes get stressed and I don't like to be stressed, but sometimes I get stressed. So I would like that world record. And I will pass to Septi.
Oh, thanks, Juan. I mean, my world record should be something related to gaming, I guess. Like, I was like 52 of Europe in a video game. But it was not a thing. It was, like the whole base of the game. So if it has just to be one thing, I mean, I have no idea. Like probably something related to the sport. Right now, I'm very focused on doing sport every day. Probably, I mean, there's much people that do, more pull-ups than me, but something related to that, like doing the most in some like I'm actually pretty good at holding. Like in a position and just hold. Yeah, probably that would be a thing. I'll pass it to Chui.
Thank you, Septi. Um, I think it would be something related to traveling, like driving or flying a lot, or like the most airline miles on Ethereum events all over the world, something like that. Or yeah, it reminds me a lot of pre-COVID world. And I think I've mentioned this story a few times, but like in 2019, I drove like 10,000 kilometers just touring with bands, and it was super fun. And it seems like it's like something almost impossible to do nowadays. So I really miss that. I would really like to set a record on something that has to do with traveling and working. I really enjoy that part. I'll pass it to Lauren.
I was looking at world records, just like I was like, I need to prepare for this. I am unequipped. So I was looking at world records and I found one that's like a nature one. It's the largest tree hug, and they had 4,620 people in India all hugging trees at the same time. And I could do that. I could be one of those people. I don't know. Like my first thought was like, oh, something cool like the longest handstand. That would be cool. But I have so many other things that I want to do that I'll like get a pretty good handstand and like hold it for a minute, and that's good enough. And then like other than that, it's like I want to focus on like working on all these blockchain for good projects. So maybe we'll just hug a tree all together. Pass it to Griff.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, sorry.
Do you want to?
I'll talk for yours.
Okay.
Sorry, it's just trying to turn on the video, but my Discord is so weird lately. I would probably say most blockchain for good projects launched. So that's the goal. Most blockchain for good tokens. Like supporting that or being somehow pushing the most of them forward. That's definitely what I'm going for. At least we'll see. I think we can get there. Common Stack and Giveth are both pretty primed to launch a lot of them. I'll pass it to Durgadas.
I don't know what we're doing. That just showed up.
No problem. So there's just a few of us to start with, so I thought we'd get started with an opening question. And it turned out to be like some of the most fun answers I've heard in a while. So the opening question is, if you could be part of any world record, what would it be?
Oh, the longest current span of time without war. So I don't know. That seems rather silly, but that's all I can think of right now.
It's very macro. And I guess Quantum, would you like to share, if you could be part of any world record, what would it be?
Yes. As I'm concerned about this global warming, I would be part. I would be glad to be part of solar panel installment world record.
Cool.
Yes,
Cool.
and that's my idea, and that's my goal. That's my goal to uh, get some kind of DAO that will finance the solar panel installments.
Cool.
So I would be the part of that.
Thanks for sharing. As I was trying fantastically to think of what I would do, I almost thought Lauren was going to say it. I did think of something, and it was something just like world, like connecting the world, and it was like the longest hand-held chain, like human chain. Like that would be pretty cool if you could imagine from like one side of Europe all the way to like the other end of Asia, like just humans holding hands, like that could be pretty cool. Like so, something like that would be really cool. You said handstand, you said hands, and I was like, oh no, I'm not never gonna think of a second one. That was really hard for me to think of. So super cool. These are really ambitious. All right. So normally we this is more of a discussion group than it is like a practical get things done. But I think because of the coordination for working group funding, I think we need to actually do a little bit. And then we're going to have a discussion group around the working group funds. So each working group will have some set funds. For some, it'll be 3 months. For some, it'll be sort of 6 months of runway. And the discussion will be around, should there be guidelines on how it can and can't be used? What do we think about ways that it could be used? Thanks, Zep, for bringing this up. I think it's actually great for us to talk about this. But first, I want to see if, well, maybe I'll frame the problem and Griff can sort of wave or jump in if he thinks that I'm framing it incorrectly or it can be better framed. Essentially, as we have 12 working groups, 10 working groups now that will all be seeking proposals for funding for our proposals. And every time hatchers or TEC token holders stake their tokens, they have to wait for the proposal to pass before they can stake it on another proposal. So it came up yesterday in the Stewards group about how we could coordinate putting our proposals and like rallying people to pass them. You want to add anything, Griff?
It's hard enough to coordinate Discord muting, unmuting. We don't want to talk about coordinating proposals. We're screwed, guys. We're screwed. No, just kidding. Just kidding completely. It's not gonna be too hard. I think it can be. I think we should be as honest about it as we can, and maybe coordinate in a more of a shelling point way than in an active way. That's why I said flocking, because it's not like they're all talking about it, right? They just kind of flock together. And I think having that kind of like we're in it together without discussing it so much is the way. And so it's like vote how you want to vote, and then go back and look in a couple days. You know, like put all your votes behind the transparency or the stewards working group or whatever project you like the most, but then come back after a couple of days and see where it's at and be like, oh, you know what? It looks like this one's the closest to passing first. And then let's all just pile in, you know, if you support it. So what I'd say is like when there's a lot of proposals up for the first couple weeks, I think the optimal strategy is for us to actually signal what we want, right? And everyone put all of their tokens just behind one proposal, and then kind of like see which ones are likely to pass first, and like test your conviction and be willing to flock. And I don't think it should require too much coordination other than if everyone has that strategy and we flock to pass. Because the thing that could happen is, oh yeah, look, all of these proposals will pass in 21 days. And none of them pass in for 21 days, and then we're just sitting there waiting for money. It's like, so what would be better is to kind of just like flock. That would be my suggestion, but I'm open to other ideas too. If we want to be more openly strategic about it, I feel like that has some negative connotations to it. So
I'll just share one thought. I almost got the TEC the Stewards Working Group proposal up, and then I was like, oh no, I need to buy TEC. So right after this call, I'm going to put it up. I feel like because we're compensating the stewards, I'd love if we could pass this one first, because then that compensation for stewards will be locked. And I think that each of the other funding proposals might want to take this stewards funding already into account. I wanted just to share that and see if anyone had agree or disagree with that point, actually. Okay, so maybe I think it's maybe worth 2 seconds just to pass around. So share your thoughts on anything that just came up around coordinating the passing of working group funding proposals. And maybe I'll pass to you, Juan Carlos, again to start.
Yes, Tam. Well, this Tuesday we made like a distribution of the roles and some of the activities, but like that information hasn't been polished. So I need some time to polish that information and to add it to the proposal, so that we can have even more clarity on who will be the persons that will be rewarded with the proposal. And yeah, I think maybe this Friday or at later the Monday I will put Gravity's proposal in the gardens. But I think we're good. Maybe one of the approaches that I started is that I will give small bounties to everyone that applied to the roles, and based on their activities and based on their engagement, we can continue like being more effective and efficient on the distribution of the bounties.
Cool. I have one question. Are we going through the process where we post the proposal on the forum first and have a sort of small period for feedback from the community before posting it on conviction voting?
Yeah, the proposal is in the forum for I think like a week or two,
Oh.
and I will update the proposal with this information that I am talking. That is like actually who will be the people that will be operating in Gravity for this first month.
Okay, cool. And then maybe we pass around to see if anyone else has other thoughts, and if not so much, then we could jump to the next topic. But maybe you want to pass to someone, Juanca?
Yeah, I will pass to Septi that I supported his proposal.
Thank you, Juan. Yeah, I mean, first, I think like these conviction votings are so great. At the beginning, when I made the proposal and no one was abstaining, it was like feeling, oh wait, me and Ivy can just pass it. But then people start to abstain, and then it was making it harder. And I think it's fine, a right balance, which is great. And regarding like coordination, I mean, at the beginning I was very excited about also distribute, like right now I just distribute them into the both proposals there are right now. But maybe like what Griff just said, like this is like let's focus, coordinate, pass, and of course pass whatever you think it's important to advance token engineering. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'll pass it to Griff.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that, like, for instance, Zepp's proposal for transparency working group is 5 days away from vote being passed. And if it's something that you want to pass, we could probably pile in on that right now and pass it faster with more votes. And I think it makes sense to pass some of these smaller proposals quickly over passing a larger proposal. Like, don't get me wrong, Tam, I agree Stewards working group funding is great, but maybe like depending on the support it gets, like if it gets immediately, a couple of whales, specifically Trent and Paul, like Trent had, I don't know if you saw the picture of Angela posted on Twitter, but Trent was about like 20 or 30%. He has like 200,000 TC, right? So he is probably, if you can get, if a whale goes somewhere and it's a proposal that's worth pushing, then we should all just pile in on top to get it to go through faster. Right now, the next one to pass is transparency, so I think we should pile in. I think we all want transparency to pass, so let's vote for it and get it going. Like Hatchbot NFT in metal, I'm not so that's not like the most pressing one, so we could probably wait a little bit. I'll pass it to Lauren.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and since, transparency is the only one I see that's actually up there. There's just that and the Hatchbot thing.
Mm-hmm.
So then I just voted on transparency, because it's like, okay, great. Yeah, I agree with this approach of like, let's just try to put them in order and move them along efficiently. So it's like transparency's up there first, we can pile in, then it'll pass really fast, and then like by the time the next one's up, we can just like pile in on that. So I think like if we just like at least through the stewards and like encourage the community as well to just like check the garden, maybe we could even like tweet about it if we wanted to get more support, to just like check the garden with some regularity, like every week we tell people to look at the garden, or if there's like a bunch of proposals up there, make like suggestions to the community. I'll pass it to Tam.
I guess I have nothing to add, and I'm excited about the next topic, so I'll keep passing. I'll pass to Chewy.
Thank you, Tam. Sorry, I got cut out of Discord. So the question is about prioritizing the proposals, right?
Yeah, it was more about sort of reflecting on the conversation that we had about that. But if you want to share any particular thoughts that you have around that, and I can say I just aped into transparency, so hopefully that moves the needle a little bit. And yeah, maybe you want to share some thoughts about it. The next topic that we have is going to be around funding, like what working groups, how we should think about working group funding, since some of us will have with 3 months to 6 months runway, and how we can use that. So I hope we can keep this section short, since we kind of covered most of it already. But anything you want to add, Tree, please.
And Tam, you and Lauren just shaved a day off of the proposal path.
Yeah,
so
high five.
Sweet.
Well, I don't think that, to be honest, I was nervous because of the minimum percentage that the T fundamentals proposal required. But then it just took off. And I think I started seeing that whale that bought a bunch of TEC and backed that proposal. And I think it was Trent. I really feel that the enthusiasm and everything worked really, really cool. And I mean, if there are proposals that are requiring more than 50K or a similar situation like this, I feel that there should be some coordination. But yeah, I personally feel that it wasn't really hard to, as soon as the T fundamental proposal got passed, I aped into transparency as well. I didn't really think there was some priority issue with SEM's proposal, but But yeah, I feel it's working fine. I share Griff's thoughts about like going with it, and if at some point we see there is like some kind of like stuck proposal or like some collective action that is required, yeah, like maybe bringing it up. But it's working much better than I thought in the beginning. So yeah, good vibes for passing proposals. Um, I don't know who went already, so I'll pass it back to you, Tom.
Dirgadas, I wonder if you have any thoughts about conviction voting and proposal passing you want to share?
I don't.
Okay, cool. And then maybe Quantum, is there anything that you want to add to the conversation?
No, I'm just listening and enjoying. Thank you.
Cool. Excellent. All right, so then the next topic is, what do you think? Working group funds, should there be some guidelines about how they can and can't be used? And do you have any ideas for how working groups can use them productively in order to grow the funds that they have available? And Zep, do you want to kick us off with this one?
Yeah, I mean, one of my biggest concerns is like, like people can just yield on stables or not doing it and be more safe. But the thing is like, like people who is willing to take the risk, are they, like, are they going to be compensated somehow? Like one thing I feel it's really important when someone applies for conviction voting and it says, okay, I'm going to get recorded these 10 calls. And no matter what, like you have to get these 10 calls recorded. And then what, how you use the funds, as long as you do what you had to do, then that's correct. But the thing is, like this is like a bigger scope because we have like, more like normally working groups have a lot of contributors. And then when you use, when you generate revenue, like you should keep funding this working group, but doing it, you might be taking some risks in order to try to help the working group more. And then like how we balance that, like why would someone will to take that risk or not, right? Like, I mean, you can farm in stables, that's great, and I think that's also like kind of a good solution. But yeah, my concerns are about that, like risk management and benefits from taking the risk besides not taking any risk. And if we want to incentivize that activities or not, maybe we don't want to, and that's fine too. Sorry, I'll pass it to Juan.
Yeah, I feel I don't have much to say in this. I would like to hear, yeah, what other strategies can be implemented. I think that what we need to do is to actually measure the risk. But if the risk is not so high, then I think yeah, it could be a good strategy. I will pass it to Griff.
Can I also just add one thing? I'd like to specifically hear opinions about whether there should be some guidelines set or whether there should not be guidelines set. So should every working group just be able to do whatever it is that they want with the funds at their own discretion, or should there be some guidelines that, that's actually a really important point I think we should cover as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my Discord, I don't know what's going on, but I would say that the guidelines should be outlined in the forum post that you make for the funding, and those are the guidelines that you agree to when you get the money. I don't think that we can or should be too prescriptive on what people should do, other than, of course, we have our mission, vision, values, and there should be upholding those, and the covenant, and that's where the guidelines are. The guidelines live there, and people can put whatever they want in the forum post. If they say, hey, I want to go to East Denver and have a crazy party loaded up with drugs. This is going to advance token engineering, I swear. You know, like as long as they use the money on it, one epic party, then I think we're good to go. I mean, if that's the will of the people, I'll pass it to Nate. Did you follow this question, or did you just hop in? Oh no,
Yeah,
actually,
I just got in.
I'll pass it to Lauren because we're on the same screen.
I'll pass it to you after Nate. I don't have too much to add. I think that, yeah, if the working group is like really clear and they make their own guidelines and they make them in the forum post, and then that is like what people are voting on to fund in the garden, that's a really nice way. So it's like maybe like our like collective guideline is that it needs to be clear like what they're using the funds for when they're requesting funds. It's not like an after the fact decision. Yeah, I'll pass it to Nate.
Can I say one thing? Like, but the thing is, like, for example, like on transparency, we're going to do the work that we said like we're going to do, but meanwhile we are doing it. You know, these funds are quiet, unstable, and the intention is like, you know, we live in a capitalist society, so why should money, you know, stick quiet?
Yeah, I wonder if the question is not clear enough, and I apologize for that. It's more of the working group will submit a proposal for funding, and they will use that proposal for that funding. However, rather than it just sitting in the multi-sig over the course of the next 5 to 6 months, they use that runway to invest to gain revenue for the working group. So the idea would be like, rather than just keeping the XDAI in a multi-sig until it's used for those purposes, is to invest it somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's way too prescriptive to try to say that they can or cannot take their own, you know, treasury management. It's like we shouldn't micromanage. And we also, in my opinion, I don't think we should also be like diving into how much each person is making or whatever. It's like, hey, we give you this much wrapped XDAI. I don't care what you do with it. If you want to tell us what you're going to do with it in the proposal, that's great. But get the job done that you said you were going to do, and we're good. And the details don't need to be worked out. Like, I don't think that the DAO can effectively govern, micromanage anything. All it can do is fund things and trust that people follow through with their commitments.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you know, like if you have this money, like the intention is always, you know, provide more value to the TC. Like actually, you know, if the transparency working group generate, let's say 2K on this time, then in the next proposal, it's going to ask the same but less 2K, right? So it's asking less money from the common pool because they generate some revenue. But the thing is, what my biggest concern is like, why would someone take the risk if, you know, like, okay, I'm going to ask for that money anyway, and then if I generate this 2K or not, it doesn't matter. And then you also like putting the risk, and you know, like, because you have to get the job done anyway. But I mean, after what you just said, Griff, like it seems like the people can just get that money, and I don't think. I mean, I don't know, like. Yeah, I mean, the intention is like, you know, don't get the TC money quiet, and, you know, like give it back to the TC. Like we really need to focus on how to generate revenue, and yeah, that's one possible way. I don't know.
Yeah, Dergadas, you want to share?
Yeah, I just I think I agree with Griff, except there's this whole ethical, you know, sort of thing that we work on in Omega and so on. So not micromanaging, but you know, within the boundaries of what you've agreed to, I guess, as a steward is maybe what he's saying. You know, rather than a free for all kind of a thing, right? So, you know, I don't know. I just like to say things with qualifiers so people don't go, oh yeah, I can do whatever I want because I'm a steward. You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's just my only sort of, I think it's useful to just repeat the fact that, yeah, we are kind of trying to work in an ethical framework and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, but Griff said, because Griff is the man. And so I'll just take it, you know, I don't know. I just don't want people to take it the wrong way.
Cool. And Chewy, do you want to? Oh, go ahead, Wonka.
Yeah, I was also thinking maybe like giving ideas as Septi was saying, like maybe just in a brainstorm, maybe the working group buying some TEC could be also a strategy, and even reward their with TC. But the thing is that, as I understand, for this kind of payments, it's better to manage stable coins, because otherwise you cannot fulfill everyone's expectations. But yeah, that can be offered like as an alternative for the contributors on a working group.
Also, investments are not sort of guaranteed to return positives. So if we've got a working group that's like, yeah, I'm gonna, put some money into this thing, they could lose that money. So, then that's the other sort of half of that too. I think a lot of times when we talk about investing the money, we're also talking about, just making money back out of it, but that's not guaranteed.
And I think that would be a most interesting case to sort of have to handle if there was a working group that made a poor decision and ended up losing the funds that they were given to support the working group. I don't know, Chewy, do you want to share any thoughts you might have too?
Yes, Tam, thank you. Honestly, once we get funding for a specific purpose, personally, it makes me super nervous to like find, like some kind of like yield return or something like that. I just feel like it starts getting like these like shady union vibes. I don't know. But I mean, I would probably feel more comfortable if there was someone that could like guide us through the process, or in a way like help the working group like educate themselves on this kind of topics. That's just like my personal view, and also following a little bit more like the line of how the question was originally misinterpreted. I was actually like asking myself like this kind of stuff. Like, let's say that we put together the one hype trivia, right? We want to probably give out some prizes in the TC tokens, not really XDAI, so that people can have like some engagement. So, what would be the process of that case, right? Manu was just telling me like, hey, like let's assume that I go to Mexico City and that I give out a talk in TEC. Like, is there any kind of way I can get like support for like lodging expenses, something like that? And I was like, oh, that's very interesting. Like, I'm not really sure about how to approach something like this, but I do feel that like this might happen, right? Like micro expenses, let's call them, or something like this. And I feel that it could be a good idea if these kind of like unforeseen stuff it could have like any like a specific process for not maybe going through the full like advice process, but in a way like reach quorum for seeing if these ideas are approved by most of the community members. So yeah, those are my two sets on the matter. I'll pass it Nate.
Yeah, thanks, Dewey. So I agree that I believe that the working group should have full discretion over how they manage their budgets. I would like to see. I'm not a big fan of us, like each working group, basically competing for funding among the community, because that's exactly what we're setting them up to do right now. And so I would almost prefer that we would all just say, hey, this is the agreed budget for the working groups as a total, and we distribute it equally, and then we force the working groups to manage their budget according to their workload. And if they need more, they can coordinate with other working groups to get extra funding, and it's not always on the community and through our conviction voting modules. I think this gives the opportunity for working groups to kind of manage their budgets each month and slowly grow, and possibly have their own investments. And if we did the whole investment thing, I think low risk stable coins within the working groups, and then we have our multi-sig who does a little bit more risky investments, a little higher return. Yeah, the only thing I just get, I have a hard time justifying saying, is it our priority to fund the community, the Team DAO working group? Like, if they're getting 70,000 wrapped XDAI for this 3 months and transparency is only getting 30,000 wrapped XDAI for these 3 months, is that really the priority policy that we want to establish within this community? And is that technically agreed upon? And so I think we just have to have a better way to kind of filter that type of message, if that makes any sense. And yeah, those are all my thoughts about it. So I'll pass back to you, Tim.
I have a question actually. Unless Tim. Oh, okay, cool. I'll ask my question. So for the working group fundings, it was really interesting to me what you about requesting funds for the One Hive trivia. Is that really something that should come from the comms working group, through their funding? I feel like the funding for working groups, seemingly the intention would fund the things that the working group needs to do, and then prizes for One Hive trivia, that could be a separate thing that goes through the garden, and then same with somebody wanting to go represent TEC at an event. I feel like maybe we would have different groups going, so that would also be its own package proposal that would go through the garden, that it's fund the TEC at ETH Denver, and then it's there's a certain amount of funds being requested to bring however many people from whichever working groups in. And I feel I don't know, keeping things more modular like that, if we lump it all in, comms' ability gets really confusing, and I feel maybe the working groups boundaries should be more defined to do the things the working groups need to do, fund their people to produce content, and get tasks done. Now I'll pass it back to Tam.
Cool. Yeah, I think that there's, I've had a lot of thinking. Maybe I'll just share my point of view now too. I like this conversation because I think it's evident and just unanimous that working groups should have as much autonomy as possible to use the allocated funding how they see fit. Ideally, a lot of that's actually described in the proposal to begin with, but I think we're certainly going to have cases where we're going to see what we had planned and what we actually need after the proposal passed are going to be different, right? Because we'll have different contexts and such. So, part of me feels that there's two different conversations that are happening at the same time. One is more about the idea of what the priorities are for the working group and what they deem to be the priorities. And the other is speculation with the treasury. So I just want to separate those two things away, right? What the working group decides needs to be, bountied or compensated is one factor. And then if the working group decides, hey, we're going to take, 30,000 of our wrapped XDAI and we're just going to, we're gonna farm it, or we're gonna invest in an NFT, or we're gonna, you know what I mean? I guess the question really is from the speculative standpoint, what is acceptable for a working group to do? How much speculation is acceptable for a working group? Is it 100%? No holes barred, whatever they want to speculate on is fine? Or is it where there should be actually super low risk? So I guess that's the real question that I wanted to raise here. What amount of speculation is acceptable? Is it, small amounts, or is it 100%, whatever, you can invest in a Bored Ape Yacht Club or something, and then flip it in 6 months and double. I guess that's really what I'm trying to what I'm trying to express here. And I would say for how working groups use their funding, I think that will impact their next round of funding very importantly, actually. And if there is a digression with the community of priorities, I think the working group will probably find that there's some contention the next time they go to request funding because of how they've allocated the funding during the period that they had. Maybe I just want to raise that point about this side of that conversation. And I'd like to open the floor. Okay, Dirgadas, you go, please.
I do also have a question. Just, is there any way to maybe just make some guidelines? So, for example, there are certain things that are a little bit out of the scope of what a working group would fund, like Lauren was mentioning regarding like sending a representative. Because even though I might show up and say I'm representing Gravity, I'm really representing the entire TEC in that situation, right? So it might be good to just have some guidelines for the stewards, so they're not just like, well, I don't think this is going to pass at the stewards level, so I'm just going to take it out of my own budget kind of thing because I want to send somebody, and maybe everyone else doesn't agree. And I think that would be that's an interesting thing to just remain engaged with, as opposed to just sort of giving options to anybody to kind of do whatever they want in certain instances. So there may be certain other examples too that are sort of outside of the scope in an individual working group that maybe it would be useful to make guidelines around to prevent potential misunderstandings later.
Yeah, but then it's also like what I'm trying to ask, and I think we are not addressing, is like, okay, what if we use the funds and we double that money? What happens? And what if we, lose that money? What happens, right? Like, what is, like when you do that stuff, like, you normally take a risk because you want to get something, but then what's the reason to get that risk? And like if you do it, like you can have your intrinsic motive. Okay, I'm providing this money to the TC, and if I lose it, okay, I'll do the work anyway. But then, yeah, like what like.
I think poor fund management can hurt the project for sure. But let's say that, for instance, you decide to take 33% of your holdings and just always keep 33% adjusted every month in a wrapped XDAI TEC pool, right? And that's it. That's your treasury management. And then all of a sudden TEC's price goes down a lot. I don't think the community is going to be like, I think the community will understand. Like, oh, you didn't have enough, you needed to ask money a little sooner than you thought because TC's price went down. Well, we appreciate that you were trying to provide liquidity with your excess capital, and I would vote to give you money faster, right? And I think that's the thing. We're just, we can set precedents and we can discover what people care about. If it's like, I bought a bunch of pickle.finance and was degenning into the biggest APR pools, and then Samsung came through and after a hack, and oh no, I lost all the money, then probably people will be like, oh, you don't handle treasury management well, so we're not going to give you more funding unless you give us a reason that you're not going to screw up again. I think you'll be held accountable to the votes of conviction voting and the token holders. And if like you screw up with treasury management, it's not the end. Maybe be like, yeah, this time I'm only going to hold DAI, I swear, guys, and that's it. And it'll probably work out is my guess, because like people have been through this stuff, they know. And if you're doing your best with best intentions, taking low risk investments, and there's an issue, I think people understand. I think people will also be understanding if you do nothing model the wrapped XDAI too, or just buy TEC with some of them. I think these are all really safe, easy things that people will be down with. I do want to say that the original Common Stack design was that you would get TEC and you wouldn't get wrapped XDAI, and then you would be expected to sell some right away. but that's okay because it wouldn't actually hurt the price, because the common pool funds would go buy TEC, raise the price on the bonding curve, and then you would go and sell into the curve and lower the price, but it's okay because you just raised the price, you know? So it's like it's a mechanism that's expected. So I would love to see projects buy TEC with their with some of their income. I don't know. What do you think, Sep? Did that answer? I mean,
Yeah, I mean somehow. But what yeah. The big thing for me is like we are going to have like people will not take the risk because it's safer, and it's, as you say, it's fine, like, okay, you ask the money to do the job, you do the job, and that's it, and that's great. But I feel like we are going to have, as a community, a lot of fans quiet, and yeah, like that they could be used. Maybe that's something like we want laser tag to do it, and maybe we want, at some point even give some more money to laser tag to generate some revenue. I mean, that's the thing we need to discuss as a community. And yeah, I mean, my only concern is like having, like, people like to do safe stuff and be safe, and that's great. But then we also like the funding curve. I don't expect it to generate revenue for funding like the TC for 10 years or 20 years. Maybe it does, but I don't know.
I guess to share maybe a conclusion that I'm reaching is that I think the funding group, the working groups themselves are asking for funding for operations, not for speculation necessarily. And they may do some prudent treasury management that is deemed accessible and low risk and will probably not harm their reputation or their treasury at all. And yeah, I guess that's where this, and that probably we don't have any guidelines, but somehow I think that there may be certain acts, like, I guess here's a hypothetical, right? Let's say that there is a disagreement with how a working group is allocating their funds. Like, how does that end up being resolved? Is that resolved in the working group itself? Is that resolved in communities? I don't know, kvetching on the forum? Yeah, I don't know, that's something that's coming up for me right now.
Yeah, maybe that hasn't been the use of gravity until now, but maybe if there are like these kind of communications happening, we will be also we should also be prepared for mediating in this kind of scenarios.
Gustavo, I'd like to welcome you to the Stewards Council. I don't know if you'd like to share any thoughts that you have about the conversation that we're having right now. But you're very welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually, this is my my first time involved in these types of discussions, but I have a feeling that this seems like a bit about maybe dividing how funds are assigned. Maybe there should be like, or an idea I have is maybe there should be like different types of funds, like a fund to do the things that are needed to be done to comply with the vision and the mission of the organization. Maybe other funds that you can take a risk on, and that there's no like a bad result on your spending on that budget if something goes wrong, or do like some type of that division, because I feel that if there is like a consequence of mismanaging the funds, you will always have people go on like the safe side of things, and I think that is not very good for innovation. Like I think that trumps innovation, because people will not be willing to take risks, because if they lose the funds or they misspend them, they will get like a bad result on them. So I don't know, I'm just listening, and that's just an idea that crossed my mind when I was listening to the different arguments you guys are giving. But yeah, and I'm not sure again how the funds are distributed, like how each team gets assigned a different amount. I'm not sure how that happens. Um, but
I'm
yeah, I
happy
would
to
like to learn more about that.
Sure, I'm happy to explain it quite quickly, actually. So there's 10 different working groups now, and each of the working groups can request funding just for the operations of their own working group. So the discussion is really about, as each working group will have their own funding, should there be guidelines about how that funding gets spent or doesn't get spent? It's really just a discussion, an open discussion about that. And thanks for your input.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so I feel like we've pretty much wrapped up, to be honest. I know we still have 6 minutes left, but it sounds pretty much like a lot of what we will see. I mean, we have stewards stewarding for a reason, and we have these working groups, and we will make put our faith that decisions will be made wisely and prudently, and then see, actually. And I think the consequences of poor decisions would be felt pretty quickly, actually, with so much transparency on how funding is getting spent. So I'm just going to see, I'm going to pass around for closings now, actually, if you want to share anything else to wrap up. And maybe I'll ask you, Chewy, if you want to get us started on a closing round.
Not really. I don't think I have something to add, but definitely would love to keep having this conversation and collectively growing up with it. And I'll pass it to Juan.
I also think that there should be a lot of learning, and also that we should always be like seeing what the other groups are doing and iterating with that, because it's that mutual monitoring, and if there are some good practices we can reproduce them, and if we identify some not so much reproducible practices, then learn from them, and have some information for that the people don't make the same mistake in the future. I will pass to Lauren.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting discussion. I mean, I think that like as we iterate on things, we'll gain experience from it. But I'm really interested in just the general idea of like working groups getting funding from the DAO and Raptextai, and then buying TC tokens, and some part of it goes back into the DAO. I think that's really cool. I mean, yeah. Anyway, I'm just like pondering how this will work. Like for cases like this, like One Hive trivia thing, like we get an amount of funds and then we like buy TC tokens from our own bonding curve and the price goes up. I don't know. It's cool. It's cool. There's a lot to play with here with this like bonding curve having Raptextai as its backing instead of like the TC token. Yeah. But anyway, those are just my closing thoughts that are here. Chris?
Yes. I think this is, I would say that we should keep things more open and then deal with the problems as they arise, as opposed to try to predict the problems that will arise. And we have open communication with each other. If we see somebody doing poor treasury management decisions, it's not like we can't talk to them. So I think we'll see. It's a wait and see approach, and I hope that different working groups take different approaches and we see what works best. Also, just really quick, I want to, for the party today, have like different sections where we talk about, making proposals to the DAO and like, what we launched, convert.tcommons.org, adding tokens to MetaMask, the reward system. And I would love to be able to pass to people to take on different little presentations So I don't know if anyone wants to take on any kind of thing, like what does it take to propose to the DAO? I don't know, is that if you'd be down, since you already did it with transparency, and you could talk about that process, and someone else could talk about like I can take convert.tcommons.org. Who's taking on reward system? Is that Livy? Is that Mitch?
Can I just add? I feel like someone should take on how to start from mainnet and get get TEC. Like somebody should take on that process. Like you have USDC or something on mainnet. How do you get TEC now?
I'll see if I can get Gideon to take that on, because he's been writing this post. And great call. And then and if there's anything else, just DM me during this next hour, and I'll pass it to Nate.
And we have 1 minute left.
Okay, I'll be quick. I just want to say that I agree with having autonomy and discretion over budgets. However, I just want people to keep in mind that budgets for me have always been kind of this moral document, this kind of policy decision. Like, this is what we value and prioritize. And so I would like to see a method that has more community input, collective community input on those types of decisions, rather than the working groups deciding what is, ultimately what they do. So those things kind of contradict each other, but yeah, that's just kind of where my mind is. And I'll pass it to anybody else that wants.
I was just going to add one thing. Would it make sense to maybe make some kind of like working group funding / proposal engine, i.e. tool, so that you can have some standardized way in which one goes about doing these things, and it might just help. Because I know in Gravity we're going to have a treasury manager, and it just might help the treasury manager work efficiently to make sure nothing is skipped and nothing is left out, and there aren't lingering questions or things missing, and it would also give a certain amount of accountability in terms of the decision making within, so that if something does go wrong, we can sort of work our way back and figure out how the chain of events happen. So that might be helpful in terms of transparency, accountability, and mutual monitoring and so on. So I don't know. That was just kind of an idea.
Yeah, just in response to that, for the proposal themselves, there is a template, but then for how to manage I think it's very, it's going to be up to each working group to sort of find their way themselves. And I like what Wonka said earlier today. Maybe I just want to reiterate that too, around, Griff said each working group will do it a different way. We'll find the best, but also, Wonka raised like, we'll see what other working groups are doing. We'll share information, and things that work well, we'll, copy the things that work well and let go of the things that don't work well over time. All right, we're at the top of the hour. Thanks for being here. See you guys at our launch party in 1 hour.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.